super cool. Yeah, my name's Ahmed Mousa. I work at Deel, and I spent all day long talking about two things. Number one, how to get visas and green cards for founders, and how to get visas and green cards for their early employees. So I'm not going to talk at you guys for the next 30 minutes about every different type of visa. However, I will be around all 3 days. And so if a visa is something that you need, or you know somebody who needs one so they can stay here and grow their business, or at least just travel here, come find me. I'll be around. Prasan's here too. He knows a lot more than I do. So come find us. I would be happy to help. But I'll just tell you a little bit of a story. So I started working with Deel back in 2021 when we were Legalpad. We were a small startup that came out of Techstars, Seattle cohort in 2018, with a really simple idea, right? There's people all over the world doing really, really incredible things, often coming to the US and then leading really big companies here. But it's really difficult to come. Like, how many people here are on a visa or green card, or have had a visa or green card at some point? Was it a fun process? Yeah, it sucks. So we wanted to make it really easy, right? And the issue is that we found that, or at least the idea was that the immigration process in the US, especially for businesses, is that it was really stacked in favor of really large companies, right? Your Metas, your Googles, your Netflixes, things like that. And we wanted to make it easy for startups so that everybody had access to the opportunities that we have here in SF and elsewhere. So we came out of Techstars, got really good at doing visas for founders. And one of our early clients was a guy named Alex, who was in YC in the winter 2019 batch. His company was Deel, and we established a pretty great relationship. What Deel does is it's your all-in-one platform. It helps companies with global hiring, so HR, payroll, compliance, onboarding, terminations, all the above, pretty much anything related to HR and hiring a global team. That's what we do. And so there was pretty natural synergy there between Deel and Legalpad. And also Alex was French-Israeli and needed a visa so he could stay in America and continue to grow the company. So we were able to get his O1 visa. Really excited to do that. And because of the close relationship and the amazing client service you can expect working with us, Deel decided to acquire us back in almost 2 years ago, which is really exciting. Since then, we've done nearly 1,000 visas specifically for startup founders. Our historical approval rate is above 97%. It's above 98% in the last 12 months. And the more we do, the better we get, the faster we get at filing. And we love it. It's literally my favorite thing in the world to talk about visas with founders. So yeah, we basically branched out. Now we bring the same services not only to the US, but we help with immigration in 30 plus countries around the world and counting. And so as your business grows, if you decide that you want to hire somebody, say in Germany, Deel can help with that. And if you want to relocate that same person to Singapore, we can help you with that as well. We can help you with the transfer there, or the US, or anywhere else. So I know that some people had sent some questions over related to their immigration status in the forum that Yasmin had shared in WhatsApp before. Do you guys want me to go through those questions now, or is that something you guys would prefer, like one-on-one? Like, does anybody have questions you'd like for me to answer for you? Yeah. What are the 3 most common questions? So a lot of people ask me, like, they'll be in the US working on a visa, like an H-1B, for example, and they really want to leave Google or whatever and start their own company. And so they want to know, can I do that? And the answer is yeah, and I'd love to help you. If you have a visa and you're working at a company, like on an H-1B or some other work visa, legally, you can only work for the company that's sponsoring your visa, but you can register an entity somewhere else. That's totally fine. If you want to talk to people about your idea and just brainstorm about it and come up with ways that, hey, this is maybe what it could look like in the future, that's okay too. You're totally allowed to imagine or brainstorm what your product would look like. And it's also totally okay to talk to investors. There's no law against you raising money if you're on a work visa somewhere. So if you have an idea, don't be afraid to go pursue it. And then if you raise VC, you can get a work visa. Like you raise VC, you hire a PR team, get a little bit of press, join an accelerator if you want. And if you do that, that is an O1 visa. Takes like 3 or 4 months, you get it, and it'll set you up for a green card. So that's probably the most common question I get from people is, can I start a company if I'm on an H-1B or something else? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much the same idea. So if you're a student and you want to start a company, you can still like register a company, you can own it, right? It's the same as like you can invest in stocks if you want, right? But investing in Tesla is different than like working for Tesla, right? So you can't like draw a salary from your business. So what people will often do is get like a co-founder who either has a green card or US citizenship and have them run the business. Or they'll set it up and then they'll see if they can get some kind of like work study program with their university set up. So a lot of times people will set up the company and then after they graduate, they'll do like OPT for their own company. And schools are usually okay with that. And if your school's not, come talk to us and we'll figure out a way to solve it for you. You can have your own name. It's up to you, whatever works best for you and your co-founder. Most people would want their name on it. Yeah, for sure. So for an O1 visa, what the government's trying to assess is whether you have extraordinary abilities in your field, right? So when you apply for an O1, you're showing the government that you are the tech founder equivalent of an Olympic athlete. And the O1 is the most common visa for startup founders for lots of reasons. Number one, it's super, super fast compared with other visas. There's no lottery component or minimum wage requirement like the H-1B has. It's infinitely renewable and it's a stepping stone towards a green card. If you have an O1, you can recycle most of the documents towards that. There's 8 criteria and a successful petition satisfies at least 3 of them. So the criteria are awards, membership, press, critical employment, original contribution, high remuneration, which means you get paid a lot for what you do, judging, so you've like judged a panel or hackathon, and then authorship, you've published things that you've written. Normally, what it looks like for a VC, for a tech founder, is you've raised ideally at least $500,000 in strict venture capital, not just like not friends and family. And we can often leverage 500K or more in VC funding as an award, right? It's typically very difficult to raise money. I'm sure a lot of people in this room know that. And the idea is that lots of people pitch VCs. They go through a very selective due diligence process and very few people come out on top with an actual investment. And so if you get an investment, you're like awarded it, and that's how we leverage it. So in our experience doing nearly 1,000 O1s for founders, 500K tends to satisfy the awards criteria. If you've raised 500K in VC, then you probably have a couple $1 million worth of equity in your company, and that's a lot of money almost anywhere in the world. And so we can use equity in your startup to satisfy the high remuneration criteria. So now you have 2. If you've raised venture capital from a like blue chip VC or accelerator like YC or Techstars or 500 Global or something like that, we can also say that you have a critical role as a CEO or founder at a distinguished company because you built something that people wanted. And that would potentially satisfy the critical employment criteria. That's a 3rd. And then if you have gone through an accelerator, we'll leverage that to satisfy the membership criteria, which is where the government wants to know if you've ever joined an organization where you've gone through a selective process to become a member. And then finally, if you've raised money, you can hire a PR person to get you some press. And then suddenly you have like a super, super airtight case. If you only need 3 criteria to be successful, that's like 5 or 6. And that is also a green card application. So we usually say, get the O1 visa, you'll get it in 3 or 4 months. Once you have that sorted, apply for the EB-1A or EB-2 national interest waiver right after. And you can help with all of that. Yeah, and we'd love to. Love to help with all that. Cool. So that's pretty much it. Just like if you want to, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so we help people like any business will help them get whoever they want a visa or green card. We specialize in working with founders because that's the gap that we find. Because not a lot of immigration providers know how to get visas specifically for founders, but you don't have to be a founding team member to work with us. And then also, you don't have to be a founder to qualify for the O1 or green card either. It just helps, right? Like if you're an engineer, maybe there's press about you, but if there's not, again, you can hire somebody to get press about you, especially in your home country. Yeah, cool. So if you have it, yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
We had a few questions on Slido, and people have been adding questions, so I was wondering if you can answer them real time.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. So someone just posted a question: How can someone on an F1 visa start a business, and at what stages can they start incorporate at work?
Yeah, so anybody on an F1 visa can register a company if they want to. It's really easy. We can help you with it. Deel owns capbase.com. We would love to help you register your company. But Stripe Atlas, firstbase.io, and Jula, I'll make it really easy as well. Nothing preventing you from starting your own company. If you want to transition from your F1 to working for your company full-time, if it makes sense for you and your idea, apply to an accelerator. Again, getting into YC, Skydeck, Techstars, or any of these other top-tier accelerators tend to put you on track towards qualifying for a work visa. If you have money in the bank, you can probably pay yourself maybe the H-1B prevailing wage for a little bit, but you're going to want to get off as quickly as possible and do the O1 or something else that doesn't have a minimum wage requirement. And that's what most people do.
So someone else also asked, E2 visa. If I register a company under my name, will I also have to spend $50K to $100K before filing for E2 visa? Or can I hold that money in my business plan?
Yeah, so the E2 is an investor visa. So to qualify for an investor visa, you need two things. So basically, it allows citizens of certain countries to invest a bunch of money in a company here in America, and then come to America to work for that country, to work for that company. So first of all, you have to be from an E2 qualifying country, which is really easy to Google. It's just your country has to have some special trade agreement with the United States. And then you do have to show up, when you apply, you do have to show receipts that you've invested a substantial amount of money into that business. Substantial is a relative term, usually around 100K, but obviously if you're starting a consulting firm, it's going to have very different operating costs than say a car manufacturing plant.
Sorry, just to ask, to pick up on that, what are the tax implications for that person?
The same as anybody else working in the US. And so when we say invest, you have to actually spend the money. So it can't just sit in your bank account. So for example, you would want to show that you have hired staff and you've completed payroll in the United States, or you've purchased equipment or an office or things like that. So just you spent money in America. And then the way that you show that it's substantial is you provide your business plan for the first couple of years in the US, and then you show that say your anticipated operating costs are 500K for the first 2 years. You've invested 100K so far towards that amount. Again, sometimes it would make sense to spend all the money and sometimes it doesn't. For example, you probably don't want to sign a 12-month lease for commercial building if you don't have a visa yet. But if you can show the immigration officer that you have done the research, you have a contract, you're ready to sign it, and you have funds in the bank set aside specifically to lease the building, that would be helpful as well. So tax implications would be the same as anybody else buying anything in America. Really high in California.
Well, someone else asked, for a strong O1 visa application, what would be a good amount of money raised by this product? And then I think my initial question is that if you go to USCIS website, it does not say you should have raised money, but then there's this general understanding that for O1 visa or EB1 or EB2 visa, you should have raised money. Well, you can actually get approved without that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So so the O1 was not designed for founders, right? The O1 is a visa that the US government gives to people that it believes have extraordinary abilities in their field, whatever that is. And the reason why it exists is so that companies can hire people that are extremely talented without having to go through the normal hurdles of like an H-1B or an L-1 or something else. It's more common. The way that the government assesses extraordinary abilities is they look at 8 criteria, and a successful petition satisfies at least 3 of them. And none of these criteria were designed for founders. Like money raised or participation in accelerator is like not a core O1 requirement. But what we did is figure out how to frame the accomplishments of a founder so that they fit those criteria. So for example, authorship, right? Like a lot of founders, especially like young ones, like probably aren't publishing a lot of papers unless like you're like in the STEM field or something. So it's extremely rare that I have a client who's published scholarly research papers. But if you work at a company or like you're in school, like you're doing your PhD and you've published, like you're the first author in a couple of journal articles, like that could be relevant to an O1 case. Similarly, like if you've ever been paid a really high salary relative to your peers in your market, like that's also great. So like, for example, if like you're a software engineer at like Meta, you probably satisfy the high remuneration criteria because you're paid a lot more usually as a software engineer compared with like other people in the Bay Area, right? So you don't have to be a founder, but it is a common visa for founders.
And my last question is, can you talk more about L1A and L1B visas and whether they're easier to acquire than the O1 and faster than H1B? I'm sorry that was like.
Yeah. So the L1 is a visa that allows a multinational company to transfer a manager or executive from a foreign office to the US to either establish a new office here or manage operations or people in an existing office. The timeline on paper is the same as an O1 visa. Takes us, 8 weeks or so to prepare an application, send it to the government, 2 weeks for them to respond, and then however long it takes to get an appointment at the embassy to get a stamp. The difference is that for the O1, you can start a company tomorrow and get a visa to work for it. For the L1, the company has to exist both in the US, at least on paper, and then abroad. You will have to have worked for the company abroad for at least 12 months before you relocate to America. And the company abroad has to continue to operate with staff following your relocation. And then for an O1, your visa is going to be valid for 3 years initially, and then can be extended every 1 to 3 years, again and again, indefinitely. For an L1, best case scenario, you're going to renew your L1 every 2 years for a total of 7 years. So there's a cap there. And at the end of the 7-year period, you either have to switch to a new visa or a green card, or you got to leave for another year and then come back on a brand new L1, which is kind of a pain for a lot of people. So the L1 makes a lot of sense for people who either A, don't qualify for the O1, but do run a multinational company or want to do that. And then B, if you're married or planning to get married soon, an L1 might be a good option. And the reason why is for any US visa is going to allow your spouse to come with you to America, but an O1 visa does not allow your spouse to work. They can go to school, they can travel to and from the country, they can live here, but they don't get to work automatically unless they get their own separate work visa. Whereas for an L1 visa, your dependent would be able to work, or sorry, your spouse would be able to work incidentally. So that's a huge plus for a lot of people.
Any other questions?
So I was wanted to ask about the L1A visa. And the follow-up question is, you mentioned that it has to be multinational and that has to be employees who are working internationally after the one is transferred here.
Yeah. Yeah, so for example, like say like your company is like in India, you have like 20 employees there, and then you want to expand to the US to hire a sales team or marketing team. You can't like fire everybody in India as soon as like you come to America. Like you got to keep that office running, and then you're coming to America to set up the branch here. And so now like you're running the business in multiple areas, like multiple countries. Does that make sense? So you can theoretically apply for a green card right away. Either you can even, I mean, technically you can apply for a green card without ever setting foot in America. It just takes a really long time. And so usually we recommend that people get a visa so they can come to America in the short term, start working here, and then have the green card application pending in the background. For the L1, there's like a special path that allows you to apply for a green card. Like it's not exclusive to L1s. It's just that L1s really set you up for it. It's a process called the EB1C that tends to be pretty quick for most people. And the requirements on paper are the exact same as the L1. But because a green card's a greater immigration benefit, there's a higher threshold of evidence. So usually what we recommend is if you want to do an L1, you should be like a manager or executive and manage at least 5 people on US payroll for like a year or so before you apply. That's not like an immigration rule. That's just like what the data shows is like a much stronger case. Yeah. So I'll be around for the next couple of days. Always happy to chat with people, either here in person or always happy to hop on a call. I'm extremely responsive over text, email, or like LinkedIn DM. So don't be shy. And if like I am slow, complain to Prasan. He's here too. All right, thanks guys.